Welcome to the Relation Stitch podcast, where we discuss theoretical and spiritual principles related to relationships, marriages, family, and parenting. I'm your host, Clyde Fraley, licensed marriage and family therapist. Let's get started.
It's interesting how I get couples in waves. Sometimes I'll come in and I'll get 4 or 5 and they're all dealing with infidelity, or then I'll get a batch and they're all wanting to do, co-parenting or something like that. And recently I've had a batch of clients come in, and this has been throughout, my career. I see this, of course, but you have someone that's a really big feeler and another person that's a processor, and they don't know how to communicate. So I kind of want to break that down today, explain some of the biology behind it, and give you some tips on how you can work through that. Now, through the lens of attachment theory, of course. Okay, the big feelers are people that are anxious and disorganized in their attachment. There's 4 styles. The other 2 are secure and avoidant. Now, if you're disorganized, you grew up in an environment that was chaotic and abusive, and you learned that when you get close to someone, they're going to hurt you. Now, as an adult, I want closeness and I crave closeness, but when I get close, I'm afraid I'm going to get hurt, so then I pull away. And that freaks your partner out because it's like, what are you doing? I don't know. Do you want love? Do you want space? I can't figure it out, okay? Now, the anxious person, what they've learned growing up is they've had abuse as well. And when they do get love, man, and attention, they grab onto that and they have this fear of abandonment. And so as an adult, you're anxious about your relationship. You're really jealous. You need a lot of reassurance. And you have big emotions as well. You guys are triggered easily, all right? And when you're married to someone that's either secure or avoidant, those are processors, okay? So the avoidant, they grew up learning that no one's going to take care of me, so I have to take care of myself. They learn to manage and regulate their emotions, and they're self-sufficient and they're independent. And they have this kind of posture where if you leave me, I don't want that, but I'll survive. I've learned to live on my own. It's okay. Where the anxious person, they definitely don't have that posture at all. They're like, don't leave me. My life will fall apart. You're the center of my world. Now, the secure attachment style, which is the most preferred, and that's what we're always striving to become, because all of us have, a little bit of anxiety in our relationships, or a little bit avoidant at times. But the idea is to try to emulate the secure style, and that comes through a lot of love and co-regulating with your parents, and they give you a lot of support. And you have a lot of esteem, right? Your self-esteem is really strong. And you kind of have that same attitude. It's like, yeah, I love you and I want to be with you, but I'll survive without you. I'll be okay, And that's kind of a healthy place to live, because you need that independence and you need some autonomy in your relationship, okay? Of course, you're one, but at the same time, you're an individual and you're finding and striking that balance between the two, okay? So in terms of communication, you got this big feeler and you got this processor, okay? So let me break down the biology part of this and how your brain works. There's a structure in your brain called the thalamus. And what happens is, if there's any kind of stimuli, right, anything that triggers your 5 senses, it goes to your thalamus and it determines whether that is unsafe or not. And then that sends a signal to 2 parts of your brain at once. The low road, which is a super fast, really low resolution signal, is sent to your amygdala. And your amygdala is responsible for shutting off the logic center of your brain, and that's why you can react quickly, okay? Puts you into fight, flight, or freeze. And then it sends it to other structures, and it releases a chemical dump. So that's where all the adrenaline and the cortisol come from, right? It's like, I need to move fast. So your body gives you these superpowers in order for you to do that. Now, the high road, which is a much clearer, more high resolution signal, goes to another part of your brain, okay? And that's more logical. And that's the part of your brain that actually evaluates what's going on. Oh, I'm just watching a movie and what I saw wasn't real, okay? And so you still feel the adrenaline and the fear because you're watching the movie and you get that excitement. But that part of your brain takes over, and then it sends different chemicals to your body, and it helps you regulate and calm down, and it helps dissipate all of those, all the adrenaline and the cortisol, okay? So what's happening with big feelers is there's 2 things. Because of the way that you're raised, and also it could be genetic, that your limbic system is what it's called, is more sensitive and it's highly responsive. All right. And your partners may not be as responsive, and their signal goes to the logical part of the brain quicker than yours. Neither one is right or wrong. It's just kind of the way that we're wired, and you have to understand that. All right. So what happens is you get this big feeler, and they come at their partner who's a processor, and they want resolution and they want answers. Where were you? What were you doing? That feels like an attack from the person who is a processor. And so they withdraw, they become overwhelmed. And of course, that's the last thing that you want from them is to withdraw, especially if you're anxious. It's like, no, I'm trying to pull you in close. I want answers. I want to make sure that we're good. And now you're pulling away. Well, it's because they're overwhelmed and they're trying to keep their composure and they're trying to maintain their emotional regulation, okay? And you're blowing up, all right? And so when the processor doesn't respond quickly, that feels like abandonment to the person who's a big feeler, okay? So you're going to have to learn how to communicate through that. First of all, I always tell my couples, look, do you love one another? Yeah. Do you love her? Yes. Do you love him? Yes. Okay. Always, do you want to hurt one another? That's the other question. Are you really out to hurt one another? Well, no. So you have to default to that. When you're in conflict, always remember, this person is my partner. They're the ones that they chose to do life with me, okay? And they're not out to hurt me, hopefully. Some people are mean and they're out to hurt you, okay? We're talking about this other dynamic though, okay? Where you're just confused on how to get through your conversations and you really love one another. So what you have to do is to first of all remember that. And the big feeler, they have to learn how to slow down and get rid of some of the chemicals that are in their system. Because when you're flooded, that's what that means. All those chemicals flood your system, okay? And you're highly emotive and you're fight, flight, or freeze. Most of the time you're on attack because you're pressing in and you want answers. I need resolution. I want to know, are we good? Are you leaving me? Do you love me? Okay? So the other thing that I noticed about that dynamic too is with the person that gets flooded and they have all these feelings, they have these fears, like their greatest fears, and they say things like, fine, it's all over. Over something like, hey, honey, will you go to the store and when you're there, get some Cheerios? And they bring back Honey Nut Cheerios. Don't you love me? You didn't hear what I said? I asked for regular Cheerios and you brought back Honey Nut Cheerios? Fine, it's all over, right? You say potato, I say potato, let's call the whole thing off. You're like crashing in and you're spiraling, okay? The reason that happens is because your frontal lobe is turned off. You literally can't think straight. So when you get into this place, and I tell my couples this all the time, some of them listen, some of them don't. They think it's ridiculous. You have to disengage. Use a safe word. Pull away for 20 minutes at a minimum, right? And you have to communicate through that. All right, look, I'm going outside, okay, and I'm going to take a walk, or I'm going to go in the other room. I will be back, I promise, and we're going to work through this. But right now, it's too intense, okay? And you have to let all that stuff calm down so that when you re-engage, y'all can work through it. Because what's happening is you're in high conflict, you're emotionally flooded, that overwhelms your partner, okay? And then at some point, they can become flooded as well, and they're saying things that they regret, and they're saying things that they don't mean, all right? So now you have multiple layers that you have to heal. The first one is the initial conflict, right? Why did you get the Honey Nut Cheerios instead of the regular Cheerios? Well, it was on sale and you get 20% more in the box and I like the flavor and it was still Cheerios. It could be that simple and that's probably what it was, okay? And you're going to have to be, oh, okay, I'll try it, right? Be reasonable, right? There's give and take in relationships, especially with the little stuff, man. Don't let that stuff ruin your relationship. Doesn't mean that they don't love you, okay? So you have to get to the initial resolve. And I know that's a simple example. And but if you're triggered and you get to the point where you're saying mean things and you're levying threats like I'm going to leave and I think we should get divorced over Honey Nut Cheerios, man, that's crazy, okay? So now you've said hurtful things. So first you have to fix the event that happened at the store, and then you got to work through, well, I called her a bitch or I said this or that, so I got to apologize for that. And then I said I was going to leave and I didn't really mean that. And now you've introduced all this insecurity into the relationship to a person who is already anxious about the relationship. Man, what a spiral. That's crazy. Okay. So it's really important that you use this technique. If you're a big feeler, you're going to have to, before you approach your partner, like especially if you've been ruminating about something all day and you want to hit them as soon as they get into the door, don't do that. Calm yourself, center yourself. Okay. Go to relationstitch.com. Under resources, there's all kinds of pages there that you can download and infographics that show you how to regulate your emotions, right? And to release healthy chemicals that help you feel better, the feel-good chemicals. So here's the other thing too, when I was thinking about trauma, because man, most all of my couples that come in, at least one of those partners have been through something really traumatic, and that creates this issue in their relationship as it relates to communicating. That's why a lot of couples, they can't communicate because they have these two very different attachment styles and they don't know how to navigate one another, okay? And so there's a lot of techniques for you to work through your trauma. You can do EMDR and there's other modalities, and you can go online and research that. And, movement is one of the best things that you can do, like get into kickboxing or MMA or, do karate. Like those things have been found to be very helpful to work through trauma. But the other thing that I don't hear so much about is this idea of forgiveness. And I'm just going to let that sit for a minute because it's like, well, you have no idea what happened to me growing up. No, I don't, but I've heard a lot of stories. And I have my own past. We all have a past, and we've all been through difficult things, And so, but forgiveness, man, that's tough. And so what I'm not saying is that you should justify or be okay with what happened to you. I'm not saying that at all. And forgiveness it's not about that person. It's about letting yourself let go. You got to let go of the past. It's saying, you know what? I forgive you. I release you of that. And you have your life, and you're not going to control me anymore. I'm not going to think about that. I'm not going to let it control me. I'm definitely not going to let it wreck a relationship that I'm invested in and that I cherish. You don't have that power over me anymore, And it's so interesting. I was thinking about the cross and how Jesus said, forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. I was like, man, because talk about trauma. I don't know if you ever thought about Jesus through that point of view, like trauma. Yeah, he was crucified and he was whipped and he was abused physically, but he took on all the sin, past, present, and future for all of mankind, which included all the ugly stuff that happened to you. And you know what he said? He could have been on the cross and said, right, whatever he wanted, and he could have been justified. But he said, no, forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. Now, I'm not saying that whoever hurt you didn't know what they were doing. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. That's not the point. The point is, that's the example, and that's how Jesus was healed of his trauma as he forgave. Wow. Man, if we could learn to do that, that could be the single most important thing that you can do, right? Is to forgive those that had hurt you and let that go. Again, I'm not saying that it's justified and what they did was wrong and they should pay a price for their crime, right? Because there's consequences for what they did, but you have to let that go. Don't let that control you anymore. That's in the past, okay? And so that's the real message that I have here today is that you're a big feeler and you have these emotions and you're being triggered, and a lot of that has to do with your past. It could have been your ex-husband, right? Who abused you, and now you're afraid of the husband you're with who's actually kind and nice. That's not fair, okay? And I know it's an automatic response, but you have to start working through that, okay? And that's the other thing. In our culture, we're starting to become aware, we're trauma informed and all of that, but it doesn't give us the right to stay in that pain. Awareness is the first thing. Okay, I'm aware of my trauma. Now I need to work on it because I'm not going to live this way because it's a miserable way to live. Being informed is just the first part, right? But work on forgiveness. And there's all kinds of stuff online you can download about forgiveness. So big feelers, processors, okay, very different styles. And so work on that because I want you to have a healthy relationship.
Thank you for joining us today. Visit relationstitch.com for free downloadable worksheets related to this episode and to access our relationship courses. If you're struggling in your relationship, go to relationstitch.com to leave a prayer request or to schedule a therapy session with Clyde.